Good afternoon to the esteemed panelists. We have a full house here almost, and I think we have the rather unenviable job of keeping you awake right after lunch. So please support us in this endeavor. I think when this topic came to us, we had different full forms for CBOM. As Venkat brought out rightly, it may have different connotations across different parts of the world. So I'll just give an introduction to what we're going to speak about today. So cryptographic bill of material is basically a detailed inventory of all cryptographic elements used within a software application, system or product. Or it's basically a machine readable format which can be used on a variety of applications and products in the ecosystem. If you go back to the genesis of CBOM, it's a generation alpha kid, right, born in the 2020s, right, and it was not so much in the mainstream till 2022 or 23 when it actually started gathering momentum, and this is in the aftermath of the SolarWinds incident, so on and so forth. So this was the genesis, and so with any generation alpha kid, if you interacted with them, you will always take whatever they say with a pinch of salt. So to educate us and to enlighten us more with their experiences, may I request now the panelists to kindly introduce themselves to the audience and also speak about what are their initial learnings or initial experiences with implementing CBOM in their environments. Venkat, may I request you to start, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really tough to keep ourselves awake post-lunch. Okay. But thanks for the quick introduction. So myself, Venkat Melam, I lead cyber and tech controls for JP Morgan Chase. And my primary focus is on the security engineering. And this is one of the areas that we actually have been looking at for the last couple of years as a cryptographic bill of material. And it's not like a full-blown operational product yet, okay? But we are actually focusing parallelly to our SBOM implementation, software bill of material, okay? And we are taking baby steps on the CBOM implementation. But some of the elements that are already in place, like primarily the cryptographic key generations, and also one of the biggest challenges that we are facing in this particular era is around the discoverability of your entire cryptographic footprint across all the systems, which are actually completely diverse. A lot are on-prem, a lot are cloud, and it can be your legacy systems like mainframes also. That's one of the areas that we are actually facing some challenges, okay? But we actually tag this along with our SBOM implementation, and also we have a proper, from a regulatory perspective, which is now becoming one of the regulatory requirement, right? From a regulatory perspective, we already have a proper regulatory change management engine, which is completely automated. So we are taking that as that particular part of the backlog and then actually working on it. Okay.
Great. Next, I'll request Shyam to introduce himself, and just to amplify on what Venkat said, that SBOM and CBOM is supposed to be the panacea, which is the cure to all ills. So just share your views, if you could, on a little, if that is actually the cure to all solutions, or it's just part of the entire risk management framework. No, to Shyam, sorry.
To Shyam.
Sorry, I thought it was for...
No, it was for you, Shyam. Sorry. So if you can just introduce yourself and just speak a little bit more about CBOM.
So hi everybody, and like Venkat sir said, right, it's very difficult to be awake now, say after having all those hot chocolate and all the sweets. But my name is Shyam Nair. I am from MasterCard. I am the regional CISO for MasterCard, and my job is to secure MasterCard assets, people, and offices across South Asia. And I think one of the interesting topics that I wanted to talk about is CBOM, and I think I've been hearing this word since I've been here in the morning, is quantum cryptography and quantum computing, and will it affect the banks and the BFSI sector in India? And I think we have a discussion and a lot of insights into this this word quantum cryptography and computing. But just to add to what Venkat sir said is that yes, we have been tracking CBOM, and it is very important for us to know what inventory are we carrying, right? Because tomorrow, with the agility or the movement if required to move within different cryptographic algorithms in case if something gets breached, it is very important for us to know where we are and what we are using. If we don't know what we own, we can't protect it. It's as simple as that. So it's of very great importance today that we know what we own and how we plan to automate it at the same time to ensure that if there is any kind of zero-day vulnerability or any hack that happens, we are aware and we move quickly to have the appropriate controls in place. So yes, CBOM is work in progress. It's a very new buzzword in the town right now since last 2-3 years, but we are progressing, and I think in the next few years when we move ahead and when technology gets more complex and quantum comes in, we will definitely have to have this in place as part of the regulatory framework which will be pushed down in the coming years is what I feel. So.
Wonderful, Shyam. Thank you so much. And next I'll go to Aman. If you can just introduce yourself and your initial thoughts or any challenges that you faced in the implementation.
Sure, Vinayak. I support one of the global businesses in HSBC, the International Wealth and Premier Banking business on cyber. We've already discussed in terms of the quantum computers becoming adaptable to break encryption as we know, being imminent. What more commonly is called the Q-day, or some of the folks also more like a fallback to the Y2K thing, call it Y2Q. It's not definitive when would that happen, but there is, for want of a better word, an arms race that is underway, and it will be sooner than later. The first thing from a CISO's perspective that anyone would want to know, and this is irrespective of, this is not sort of specific to cryptography, is knowing the inventory that you have to protect. Without knowing the inventory that you have to protect, you can't prioritize, you can't really marshal your defenses in depth, and therefore, I know it's not very elegantly coined, and it's a bane of our technology industry. We come up with 4-letter acronyms. So this is yet another 4-letter acronyms, and I would suspect a lot of people outside the hall may not have walked into the hall because CBOM may be something that you're not even familiar with. How does it expand? And I don't blame them. It's yet another one of those jargons that we kind of acronyms that we kind of create to obscure our field. But if you get down to the rudiments, it's essentially knowing what inventory do we have on cryptography as we stand today. And in that, how do we prioritize? There'll never be enough time. There'll never be enough resources. How do we prioritize to shift to a meaningful mitigation against quantum computing when Q-day comes?
Great. Aman, thank you so much for those insights. I think another 4-letter acronym that worries CISOs a lot is TPRM, or third-party risk management. It's always right there in the top 3 risks that any CISO is tracking. So while we talk about our ecosystem moving and a lot of things moving on towards CBOM, SBOM implementation, I would like to ask Venkat, how is it that the vendor ecosystem would be prepared for this transition to CBOM and for post-quantum cryptography, and what role would CBOM play in this entire transition, especially since our vendors are our partners in progress? So what's your take on that?
Sure, Vinayak. One of the things is our weakest link is always the vendors, in my view. Okay, so, and you have seen almost 40% of the cyber attacks recently are related to a vendor, or actually sourced through a vendor actually. So which is one of the alarming area, and you might have seen an open letter from our CISO Pat Opet for all the third parties and vendors recently. It's all in the public media. You can go and refer. And in whatever our view is actually, it's I think probably reflects in general what is the problem that we are trying to solve. A lot of times we just onboard a vendor and we'll just get onto an agreement, and then whatever the services they provide, that's it. There is no actually the real-time validation, authentication, and also all the regular checks that we do is not happening on a regular basis. Of course, from a compliance perspective, we'll keep on validating once in a year at least the contact details. But some of the challenges we have seen is there are some relationships and vendor engagement that we have seen where even the contact numbers are not updated for last 2 years.
Right.
And we are expecting them to be like completely plugged in, having the real-time issues and everything. So in particular to cryptographic bill of material, first I would say we need to have a complete discoverability and also the repository of all the things that we use, including the vendor ecosystem and including all the third-party products that we have. And at the same time, we should have a contract in place where they must be sharing the real-time information, and we have that in implementation now. So we actually assess all our vendor portfolio in a different file-level scale and all, and we make sure every vendor is sharing the information. Just like you're supposed to report to certain, we expect all our vendors to share any incident happens immediately and any compromise happen immediately. So are they doing diligently? That's a different question, okay? But that's at least our expectation. And another thing in the previous session, somebody also called out actually, let's say the intel is coming from either from about our organization or from a vendor organization. So we are actually sharing it back. There are a lot of times where we are alerting the vendors saying that, okay, we are seeing your data in darknet. It may or may not be related to us, but you are at trouble, okay? And
Right.
how are you protecting yourself? Do you need any help? That's another area that we are focusing. And the fourth area is more around how are we cost sharing this information among all the vendors that we have. And if we can build this kind of an ecosystem, okay, right from the core, okay, in your CBOM, and having that direct real-time information passing through and also sharing across all the parties, that would actually be a very good implementation in my view.
Fantastic, Venkat. I think that's a very important thing that you said, that it has to be a collaboration, it has to be a partnership, and we have to grow together in this journey, especially now that technology is galloping at this pace. My next question is to Shyam, and another thing that's on the top 3 list of CISOs is the budget. We're always falling short of budgets, falling short of resources to take up some of these new initiatives, right? SBOM, CBOM is also up there, and there's a lot of BAU that needs to be taken care of. How would we optimize, or how would this investment or the finances scenario or the resources scenario grow or mature in the scene, in this current scenario where we have a requirement of CBOM and so many integrations being built into the ecosystem?
So I think the investment that needs to go in should be based on the risk that the company should be taking up, right? So the important word is risk, and what are the controls that we have. So I've made some notes for myself, coming from the audit background. I used to write a lot, so I've just done that for me, and it will also serve me as a purpose so that I don't forget my points, right? So one of the most important thing is visibility and inventory management. So if you don't track the cryptographic algorithms that you have, or what is implemented on your application level or API and all, this poses a very high risk to you. And in case if there's a breach, you pay more than what you want to invest, right? Second is any regulatory aspect that you see, right? Today you have SEBI and RBI in India, and globally you have all the regulators talking to each other. If you don't know, today, a regulator from India is talking to a regulator in London and the regulator in the US, right? So they have a common platform, just like the CISO platform or what we are talking right now, where they go and talk and they share their best practices. And this is something, a CISO's nightmare, that in case if tomorrow a rule or a regulation that comes up that is not being tracked, it will get you to cancellation of licenses and heavy penalty, which I am sure that none of the banks or industries want to get into. Third point is the cryptographic agility that anybody wants to move into, right? So if you are not tracking what you're using right now, you will not be agile in case if you want to move to the next technology when it comes to crypto, right? So how are you tracking that? Last but not the least, I think Venkat sir touched upon it, is vendor management, which is more important. And I think 3 points which I would like to mention under vendor management is one is due diligence. That is a very robust and a very in-depth due diligence that needs to be done. Second is the ongoing governance with them. It's not that you do the due diligence and you just leave them. No, you have to have a governance mechanism in place to ensure that you talk to them every now and then, and you ensure that they are, following the policies or the guidelines that you have given. And last but not the least, I think this is a topic which none of the people have thought about, but I've seen it in my career, is that fourth party, right? Now, what is a fourth party? Now, if your third party is outsourcing their work to a fourth party, right? We don't have a relationship with them. So how do you track them, right? How do you, include that as part of your contract with the third parties? That is something that we need to think about. So looking at all the risks that I just spoke, I think with time, I think companies will realize how important it is to invest in, CBOM and have these controls in place to ensure that they comply not only to the local regulation, but also meet customer expectations as a product or as a company. Thanks, Vinayak.
Great. I think compliance is again high on the CISO list, and like you said that it's not about India anymore, it's a global field. In this, I think one of the enablers has been the cloud. My next question is to Aman, that with cryptographic agility and key management being native to the cloud and a lot of ease in terms of compliance, in terms of reporting, is this going to be the death knell for on-prem deployments? And as the future grows, are we going to see a full cloud migration?
I don't know if we have representatives of cloud service providers in the audience. Do we have any?
I think it will be music to their ears.
All right. No, so few things. So firstly, at the outset, I think it's a little early to sound the death knell for on-prem, and I'll explain why. Cloud has taken more than a decade and a half to really kind of start delivering on its promise. And it has. There is no doubt it has, there is a significant advantage of operating in cloud. Whether you think of it in evergreening terms, whether you think about it in adaptive compliance, whether you think about it in robust key lifecycle management in the cloud, or crypto agility that Shyam's talked about or Vinayak's just alluded to. Coupled with that, the promise or the lure of price advantage, created a euphoria in the industry in terms of cloud-first strategies. Most of you would have experienced, that sentiment. Where we are now, that euphoria is kind of a little dampened by reality. It's not cheap. I think most of you would probably agree with that. Second, there are other kind of elements that are coming into place, regulatory being one. Data residency is a huge concern. So therefore, from a CSP perspective, we are now kind of plateauing. And most organizations, I suspect my colleagues would probably echo the same, have reached a kind of a middle ground where you have a fair amount of your estate on-prem and also a significant estate in cloud, and there are certain specific elements where you're moving to cloud. So, you'd probably move to cloud in some geographies for resilience, in some geographies for data analytics, and so on and so forth. I think there's a great opportunity for cloud service providers to, again, rev up the adoption. And that comes in at the back of, the challenge of getting ready for quantum, post-quantum cryptography. They recognize that, which is why if you look at how most of the leading CSPs, whether it's AWS, Google, etc., are adapting to this new opportunity. They're really brisk. I'll use just AWS as an example. They have published a fairly robust quantum readiness strategy for their customers at the end of Q4 last year. they've been actively involved in the PC crypto selection. So they've been, part of the journey that NIST has kind of orchestrated, which has led to the new FIPS standards for post-quantum cryptography. And therefore, they're already hitting the ground to some degree running. They have definitive work streams that are addressing it. So and it's no coincidence that the first of their work stream is on inventory, which is essentially what we're all talking about here.
Right.
The next one, of course, is in terms of embedding post-quantum cryptography in the endpoints, and then the others is in terms of digital signing algorithms being put into crypto libraries to serve a post-quantum environment. So that's all there. What I do feel is that there would be a resurgence for this reason to go into cloud. Some trends that you see recently, many of you may have seen the watershed acquisition that happened March of CNAP solution, $32 billion. Essentially, the key kind of competency of that CNAP solution is SBOM. And SBOM is kind of the parent umbrella of CBOM.
Absolutely.
If it didn't have that promising value in SBOM, it wouldn't have been valued at one of the highest, values of that has been paid out by a cloud service provider. So that's why I do think on-prem will stay for a while, but cloud will have a resurgence in the near future.
Understood. Great. My next question is to Venkat. With this deluge of technologies, the war for talent is becoming crazier, right? We have this technology, but we need the people to implement it. But the people to implement it are rarefied in the market. As this technologies are, jump leaping over time and space, how is the talent going to be brought up to speed with all these developments? And
I think that's going to be one of the key factors, how we actually project ourselves primarily from India and overall in Asia Pac. Yesterday in one of the sessions I got some metrics around there is a skill gap of 4 million resources that we need in globally, 2.5 million in Asia Pac itself, and almost 30% of the roles in India are not getting filled because of the skill gap. So these numbers are actually overwhelming, and it's actually a problem that we need to tackle. So the way that the organizations is corporate, I'll particularly talk about what we are doing at the same time. We can also discuss around what the industry need to do. So we have 3 different levels of programs for all the talent that is coming into JPMC. We have an entry-level talent where we actually get directly from the colleges through our entry-level program called Code for Good. It's basically a hackathon and a lot of tests they need to go through. And we have a mid-level talent where we directly get from the industry. And we have various programs. By the way, I sponsor internal community engagement for JPMC where talent development is part of that one. We have communities like Ignite where there's a community of practice. For every technology, we have a community of practice. Like be it blockchain, be it quantum or cybersecurity. So we have a community of practice. Globally, all our folks working in that space are connected. Okay? So they have community of practice at a tech center level and globally as well. That's one of the things where you learn from your peers. Absolutely. Another thing is we have a focused training sessions for all the technology needs. At the same time, you have some core skills, primarily the professional development skills as well. And I think in the previous roundtable, I was also talking around our skill gap analysis and the skills metrics, how we are actually having a solid skill gap analysis for every role. Okay, anyone who wanted to come into that role, we'll do a skill gap analysis, we'll assess where they are and how we are actually going to upskill them and within the same role, or maybe we'll prepare them for the next role. That's another area that we are focusing internally as well. And our focus is a lot on professional development, and we have a practice of how you are actually becoming aware of a particular brand new technology or anything. So first getting aware of it, learning it, and we have various platforms and labs where you can practice the skill also. And for example, when this AI came into picture, we created a lab in Hyderabad Tech Center for AWS Deep Racer participation. So for the last 5 years, we have been winning the global AWS competition. Wonderful. And 2 years we are in the top position. Last year we were at 8th, but consistently we are in the top 10 for the last 5 years, just because at one investment we made, we dedicated lab where we can actually practice directly. Anyone can come, be part of that community. They can practice with the real bots over there.
Great.
And AWS is giving the compute. Of course, we need to get the license and everything. We need to pay for that one. That investment really helped us to scale our AI posture now. So you might have already seen in the news that JPMC is getting already 20% efficiency leveraging AI, and all our LLM suite actually won the Global Banking Awards. And also we have done an AI-based threat modeling solution, which is also won the Global Banking Technology Awards. All this is because of the investment we made 5 years back. Okay? So in my view, we need to have some kind of similar investments at an industry level also.
Right.
And I appreciate forums like DSCI, and we have Dr. Sriram here from Cyber Center of Excellence in Hyderabad. So we have T-Hub, T-Works in Hyderabad. Some of these institutions are really helping us to connect with academia. And also, now the academia innovation is also going multifold. Okay. So I've been talking to multiple universities and colleges as part of our academic partnerships, and helping them to correct their curriculum, focus on the latest technologies, okay,
right,
and upskill their individuals, and also file some patents. And we also, as I mentioned in the previous session, we have something called Technology Innovation Forum in JPMC, where we engage with academia directly and engage with startups directly, with the alpha of course, DSCI and CCOE T-Hub, okay. So these are all the things that we have been doing from a corporate perspective. At the same time, I think we need to now step up, scale this to larger group,
right,
identify early in the stages what would be the demand, okay, and how can we do it right now, like, because when you need the skills, it will not be available. You need to invest it almost 5-10 years back. I think I would say that early investment is the time now, be it in quantum computing, and we have a gap even in blockchain. AI is now scaling up, so there's definitely a lot of opportunity there to start this early.
And I think a very important thing that you've spoken, and the new thing or the new transition that we've seen is that technology isn't limited to tech folks. It's from all streams of life, from operations, from treasury, everybody is pitching in and doing their bit. So in case Shyam or Aman have anything to add to the human talent development part?
If I, one of the interesting things about quantum computing is you have potential solutions that would address the threat that we see from a cyber perspective, which are either mathematics based. So all of us historically are very familiar, and that's what we use universally. Each one of the people in the room is using it, whether we are conscious of it or not. We're using abstract mathematics, number theory that we are using, which is part of the current cryptography. The post-quantum cryptography is also the next level of mathematics, which will ensure that the computational, by the computational theory, it will not be breakable in polynomial time. It will still need exponential time, and which is why it's resilient to quantum computing. So you have one talent which lies in the field of mathematics. But interestingly, unlike the current mechanism, you also have another talent which lies in the field of physics. Because quantum computing is entirely about physics, and you have solutions like quantum key distribution, which is pure physics. And those are already getting deployed, and those are also getting favored by some of the regulators in the world. Hong Kong, for example, is very welcoming to quantum key distribution. Likewise, UK is very welcome to quantum key distribution. So that's one split. You will have mathematicians and you will have physicists who would probably be part of the talent pool. The other one, and this is probably something very close to my heart, and to some degree, Venkat covered it. Cryptography is something that requires a fair degree of passion. It requires a great degree of curiosity, a great degree of persistence. It's not something that a lot of people may manage cryptographic projects, and that would fall more in project management space. But genuine, nerdy, deep crypto requires that curiosity, passion, etc. Some of you might have seen Imitation Game. the movie that talked about breaking of Enigma of Bletchley Park. I don't know if you recall, those who have seen it, the recruitment method there. The people who were recruited were crossword solvers, puzzle solvers. There were people who, it was a very different kind of skill set which would be able to attract, kind of confirm to the team that was working in Bletchley Park that there is this innate curiosity, persistence and passion in these people. I know, of course, it was romanticized in the movie with people like Keira Knightley being recruited by Benedict Cumberbatch, but I mean, moving away from that, like Venkat said, whether it's internal hackathons or whether it's external hackathons, the hackathons in capture the flag scenarios would have to focus on identifying that degree of passion, that degree of nerdiness, to be able to really harvest the right talent. It's not going to be the routine run-of-the-mill kind of recruitment.
Interesting. Shyam? Yes.
Yeah, so I think one of the best lines that I read last week was, whatever maths can't do, physics can, right? And quantum computing is one thing that has really got me, interested to read about it a lot. And I normally watch these videos from Professor Kaku. I don't know if you guys know, he's a Japanese scientist who is a professor in University of Michigan, I believe, and he talks a lot about quantum computing and cryptography and all those stuff. So interesting. So like, both my friends said, it is upon companies to develop its people, right? And it's not limited to technology now, that only tech folks can work. No, it's somebody who is, a pioneer or who has an interest and a geek, like, Aman said, who can contribute to how they can enhance or safeguard the security of a certain institution is something that we are looking at. And we as a company, also, I think the new word AI has been lately, used in the town since last 2-3 years, but let me tell you that MasterCard has been using it since last 12 to 15 years to track down fraudulent transactions. So, right? So any transaction that it feels is not coming from you is based on the algorithm that we have written. For example, if I take my card, let's say to Jaipur, and I swipe, it knows that, well, I've never been to Jaipur, and using different combination and permutation, it will say that this transaction is not fraudulent. Sorry, is fraudulent and could be fraudulent. And one of the technologies that we are working at, which will change the face of payments worldwide, is to track how quickly somebody can make a payment, right? So based on the way how you hold your phone, the way how you use your biometric, the speed at which you make the payment or you enter the PIN, it will know whether it's you or somebody else making payments, right? So this is the kind of technology that companies are pacing towards right now. And I think, like both of that mentioned, it's the job of the company and the duty of the company to groom and nurture talent and bring up people up to the speed to give them an opportunity to work in what is going around in the industry right now. So,
wonderful.
Thanks, Vinay.
So I think we've heard quantum cryptography a couple of times, but I think I'll go to Aman and ask you, is the Shore or the noise around Shore's algorithm justified, or is it years away from commercial implementation? What are your thoughts, and how would CBOM kind of become the stepping stone for this preparation? What are your thoughts around it?
I think the world should be glad for the Shore around Shore's algorithm. Shore came up with that almost 3 decades ago. Interesting, those of you who kind of done mathematics and were probably not very happy with Fourier transforms. He created quantum Fourier transforms to make it even more lovable. The smiles on the face would recognize Fourier transforms is always a little bit of a struggle for even nerdy mathematicians. So, but he was prescient. He was able to visualize that our existing ways of working would not persist. And what we really created was a fear of God in the ordinary folks across the globe. The fear of God of, are my secrets going to remain safe? and the greed, can I break somebody else's secrets? And the entire acceleration in quantum computing is largely because of Shor's algorithm. We may still have been, relatively slow, relatively nascent. We may have been more theoretical rather than the amount of dedicated state and industry effort to be able to build quantum computing. In many ways, in the previous response, I talked about the code breaking that took place in World War II. It's analogous to that. The best talent got huddled together to be able to break enemy codes. And that gave us, and we are all technologists here, that gave us the first electronically programmable digital computer. That came in at the back of that particular team sitting there. Why? Because they wanted to break the German Lorentz cipher. That gave us the Turing machine. That gave us the top award in computer science. I mean, it's named after Alan Turing, it's the Turing Award. It shortened the war for 2 years. It saved 1 million lives. If you think about quantum computing now, some of the things that Shyam was talking about, fraud mitigation, greater flight safety, curing Alzheimer's, all of this will soon become a reality. Arguably, and there's no single factor ever, but arguably because of the Shor's algorithm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So I definitely think that is very welcome. I am also, and I think it's in our community, particularly the CISO community, it's healthy to be paranoid. So while the naysayers will say, wait till 2035 for Q day, I would say no, better get our act together by 2030. So it'll happen sooner than later. And I'm not saying it, purely because my profession works on being anxious or being paranoid. You see the telltale signs in the industry. It was just a random news article, October last year, in Shanghai, a 22-bit integer was broken for RSA. In fact, broken when I mean prime factorized for RSA. And it was done by a few academics using D-Wave, quantum annealing computer. When these things start, they get a life of their own. And they very, very quickly, with state sponsorship, because think of the fact that if any of the state is able to break into all the existing secrets that the other state has, which is a very clear and present fear that everybody nurses today, you can kind of imagine the amount of budgeting that is behind it. So it is imminent, it will happen. It may happen on the quiet. We may get to know it later. A lot of the zero-day vulnerabilities get exposed much later after they have been actively exploited. This is one of those scenarios where there will be a hush time and then there will be a reveal time, and the reveal time will be followed by panic. So it is going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. And coming back to the final thing, yes, absolutely, we should have a sharp focus to be able to get together the cryptographic bill of material. We should actively start prioritizing. We've talked about how to prioritize. There's some very simple common sense rationale around it. One of them was espoused by a guy named Mosca. He said that, if your shelf life of a particular algorithm added to, the migration time is more than the imminence of the threat, which whether you take it as 2035 or 2030, then you better prioritize it. So we should prioritize and we should move forward. The last word of crypto, why it's so important. We've just had, the major madness across the country on the finals of IPL. Hypothetically, just for a moment, think of Bangalore playing Punjab and there being no scoreboard. Absolutely no scoreboard. Would anybody be interested? Would anybody pay a dime? Would anybody have a sense of euphoria about it? CBOM is the scoreboard.
That's a lovely analogy. Wonderful, Aman. And I think McKinsey agrees with you, and in a recently published report, they've stated that the BFSI sector is the most prominent to be vulnerable to the migration to quantum cryptography. So you're absolutely on the spot. And so coming back to the BFSI sector, and before I go to Shyam for my next question, I'd like to open up my next question to the audience. And my next question to the audience would be, is SBOM or CBOM a guided route map for an attacker? You know, it's a question that there are a lot of theories around it. And before I come back to the audience, I wanted to ask Shyam the next question. You know, in the current scenario where technology is outpacing regulation, now the regulators, when you speak about SBOM, CBOM, it's just come into the mainstream now, but at the pace at which technology is outpacing regulation, how is it that the BFSI sector should start building roadmaps, frameworks to the future where, you know, you may not fall back on the regulator to kind of build compliance into the system?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, and the word quantum cryptography or the quantum computing, is it real? The hype is real? Yes. Will it take time? Yes, it will take time. So I think few of the things that, you know, companies across the world can start is, one is by preparing for quantum threats. And, you know, how do we do that, right? So what we do is we start risk assessments very early, and we prepare our assessments to face the quantum threats that are coming our way, right? So we build a very robust framework, you know, right away to ensure that whatever is coming to us, which is unseen, which we can't see, and, you know, we have ourselves ready for it. Second is strengthen the cybersecurity foundation of our company, right? We work very closely, we should be working very closely with, you know, government bodies, institutions, and, you know, educational bodies to come up with what are some of the risks, or let's say implement zero trust. And I think in the last few years, the definition of trust has changed. First we said, you know, trust but verify, but now we say don't trust. We don't even trust, you know, the CFO or the CISO to give, or the CEO to give access to, you know, any of the sensitive folders, because we'll first let them authenticate and only then they will have access to, right? So implementing a zero trust policy across, you know, the company. Then we can also think of having a hybrid encryption solution, right? What that means is having, so if you have a car, right, which is like hybrid, or let's say if you have a car which is only petrol, and if you know, the fuel in my car is over, how do I move ahead, right? So I buy a hybrid car which might just turn on the battery mode, I'll just move, right? So maybe have a hybrid kind of encryption in place. Then align with the evolving regulatory requirement. Get in touch with your regulators to see what's going on in the industry, what's happening. Has there been any case where, you know, any companies have been breached, or so on and so forth. So working closely with them. You know, upskill and govern. I think we have touched upon this. You upskill your people, you upskill, you know, your tech stack that you have for your company, and get ready for, you know, the quantum that is coming your way. And I think last but not the least, I think we should be collaborating within, you know, companies, government organizations and regulators to ensure that the risks that is coming is not just one company, but, you know, as a global threat, and we should be working towards it. So that's in my opinion.
I think that's a very important point, that, you know, forums for collaboration amongst the BFSI sector would gain prominence as technology is outpacing regulation. Coming back to the audience, if there are any views on SBOM or CBOM being a guided route map for an attacker. Anybody, any views?
Obviously, there's no question of it, right? So, BOM and CBOM, whatever you take is an insight into what is happening, or what you have implemented, right? It has to be safeguarded, as we safeguard our vulnerability management or vulnerability information.
All right.
Right? So it is never a public document. It is for internal consumption only, and only for certain people to have access to ensure compliance, to ensure remediation steps, etc. Right?
Great.
It is definitely, if it is getting out, then it's a problem for us. There's no two thoughts about it. But I have a question for the panel. Probably.
Sure, please go ahead.
Right. See, now there are regulations which requires organizations, especially financial institutions, regulated entities, to have CBOMs in place, right? But there is utter lack of awareness on the approach, methodology, the tools that we need to use to prepare a basic CBOM. We are not talking about analyzing it for quantum safe, whether it is quantum safe or not. A basic CBOM, what are all the cryptographic assets that we have? Basic CBOM we have to create. That is the asset, like what we have as an asset list, right? So, what is your experience? What are the approaches, or what are the different methodologies, or what are the tools that you have used in your respective organizations to create this CBOM? If you can provide some insight into it, it will be helpful for us.
Yeah, some of the things, awareness, in fact, that's one of the things that we were talking about, okay, and I think, when I started with that saying that, okay, how many of the folks really know what exactly is CBOM, okay, and then it comes to building that CBOM. I would say we need to think beyond compliance, because regulators are catching up in my view, okay, it's like almost 4 or 5 years behind, okay, you name any technology, anything that we do. So, if you have an ecosystem in your organization that thinks beyond compliance, that actually have this proactive security measures, okay, then obviously it will lay down path for any of these new things coming out. It can be SBOM few years back, now CBOM, or anything in future as well. Some of the things, in particular our organization, what we have been doing is, what are those proactive measures, okay? Even before the CBOM is in place or SBOM in place, we do have a visualization of all the assets, all the inventory, all the connectivity, and we do have an end-to-end business workflows and technology workflows. If a transaction fails, we will be able to, in fact, I have a couple of patents in that space where we were able to pinpoint exactly where it failed and what happened, what will be the overall impact, and what is the exact thing that we need to fix. So those kind of things. We have never thought, okay, it will relate to CBOM in future or it will relate to SBOM in future. All that we were trying to do at that point of time, trying to solve a problem and also trying to be more proactive in protecting the bank, okay, versus actually waiting for some regulator come and tell us, okay, you need to do this, okay. So that's, I would say, if we can actually have that kind of an ecosystem, then it will actually lay the path and then we will be compliant. For example, another point I would add on a couple of items is more around, so it is not like a new thing, just like you already have a technology lifecycle management for all your assets, okay. This is like how you are actually going to manage another technology lifecycle management for your new asset, okay. So, all other things combined. So, if you have that proper system, for example, we have a solid regulatory change management system. We operate in 65 plus countries. So any new regulation, we can't take that as a new item and then say, oh, now we need to fix this. There is an engine already running, there is a feed that comes, okay, and that will automatically analyze what are the new requirements and it will validate whether we already have the right level of controls and compliance in place. And absolutely, that will actually feed into this centralized engine that we have built, and all the non-compliance it will report immediately, then we'll go into directly the tech backlog. So that's how we need to make sure we have a solid engine built so that all these things can handle easily in future. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think, that's a great question, and I think one of the key takeaways for me as a risk professional or as a CISO is teams not talking to each other, right? So one of the, important things that we practice is within the company, all the 3 lines of defense. First is the product, they have a risk team. Second is the corporate security team, and the third is the internal audit team, right? They talk to each other, they do their individual risk assessments, and they find out what are some of the risks that need to be addressed, rather than waiting for a breach and an advisory coming from a regulator saying you need to have these controls. So global practices, individual risk assessments, talking to each other, collaborating with the tech team, sitting with them to understand what are some of the failure points that they see, what are the points of compromise, is something that we can do as a company. And if I think we can
sustain this kind of culture, I think we'll have all the risks that can be going into the risk register, and we'll be having mitigation controls in place to ensure that, these things are controlled. So, yeah, thanks.
If I may, I'm conscious of time, two very quick points. We've been doing, we're using a couple of kind of partners to be able to inventorize our CBOM. And there are many who are kind of offering their capabilities in the space. So obviously you want to know who is worth their promise. In the initial kind of findings, here's the interesting piece. It's not about what will happen when Q day comes. It is what is it that we are sitting on today, which is potentially a mine. We're today, 23 years post DES was demised and AES was mandated across the globe. I can wager a bet that in all your organizations, you'll still have telltale signs of DES. If not DES, definitely triple DES. Triple DES has also been demised. So the first thing that you kind of discover at the back of this exercise is these immediate low fixes that we need to do. The second thing is, I think universally our lens of encryption is based on what is it that I need to protect now. So I need to protect, for example, credit card pins. I need to protect OTPs. I need to protect passwords, all of that. All of these are short-lived. All of these are something that I don't need to worry about on Q days. So the lens that we'll be looking at once we have a comprehensive CBOM would actually be what are secrets which have longevity, which I do not want somebody to harvest today and decrypt later. I think those are two important things. So there is a gift of doing this right now, which is not even linked with quantum. You're sitting on mines. And the second is you are able to prioritize better for quantum.
I think we have time for one last question. Quick one. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Ruba from JP Morgan. I will be real quick. So as Shyam has already pointed, we are preparing for the quantum risk and the upcoming new technologies. What would be what do you think the future, the role of the CBOM will evolve in the near future with the AI, the quantum computing and the regulatory increased pressure?
Yeah, it's a combination of all. So how do we use AI? We can automate all the CBOM into our DevSecOps, right? We can get that into the cloud and automate it. And in case if we find any, algorithm or any of the, encryption that is out of, order, we can just replace it. That's number one. Regulatory pressure, it will be there because like I said that I got to know lately that all regulators talk to each other, which we are not aware. I mean, I was not aware of. If there is something that they introduce in the US or the UK, be sure in the next 6 months it's going to come back to India, and it's vice versa, right? So, coming to your question, a thorough risk assessment needs to be done of what needs to be protected, what are our critical assets, integrating AI and CBOM within the entire development gambit, and automating the entire thing will definitely help us not only to comply with regulatory requirement, but also give us an inventory of what we own. So if we don't know what we own, we can't protect, as simple as that.